Welcome to the Let's Talk About the Deep Stuff podcast. I'm your host, Sean Kneese, and on this show, we have off the cuff and candid conversations about the big topics in the world, and we dive deep into the deep stuff. And today, we're getting real about vulnerability, specifically vulnerability with art and creativity. How much of yourself do you actually put out there in your art? And what's the line between sharing and oversharing? And how does being vulnerable shape the work you create? And I've been thinking about that balance a lot lately because honestly, when I started this new show, my goal was to break down those walls I'd been hiding behind, and I've been hiding behind in my previous podcast. Back then, with BSing with Sean Kay, I was more focused on showcasing others, amazing artists from all over, their journeys and passions, which was inspiring, but I wasn't really opening up my own story. And switching gears to let's talk about the deep stuff was a way for me to do that, not to just have deep conversations with guests, but also share my own vulnerabilities, my own struggles, embarrassing moments, and how they made me grow, and just being honest about it. And but here's the tricky part where it comes in. Being vulnerable can be powerful, but is there a risk in putting too much out there? And it's like knowing when to put too much out there, or the right circumstance, or because sometimes you could put something out there in the wrong way, or somebody could it has to be in the right way, because sometimes people can take advantage of that too if it's the wrong person, you show a weakness or something. But vulnerability doesn't have to mean weakness. It's just more self-awareness and being honest about. But and can you overshare to the point where it stops being helpful and starts to leave you exposed or hurt? And I think that's the question we all have to wrestle with when we put our lives and our art out into the world. Vulnerability is a strength, but it's also a boundary. It's about choosing what parts of your story serve your growth and connection, and what parts maybe you need to keep close to yourself. So how do you find that line, and how does it affect the art you create? That's exactly what we're diving into today. And to help us break it down, we got poet and writer Bree Bailey not in the studio, but in the virtual studio. And you've actually written from what I saw you writing, you've written about anxiety and stuff I've talked about. I think I even wrote one thing similar once where I talked about cleaning off a pot and compared that to clearing my head. I remember you wrote that kind of the metaphor of cleaning everything up, and how that kind of centered your anxiety and everything. So, and I know you also have the poetry collection Waiting on Whisper Street, which had the 2023 Jack McCarthy Book Prize. It's out now on Right Bloody Publishing. And her work is raw and honest, exactly the kind of real talk we need on this topic. So I guess, what are your thoughts on vulnerability and your work and how everything? So.
Yeah, I think it's a skill, it's a muscle, right? It's something that some of us are a little bit more attuned to it than others, but I think all of us are capable of it. And all of us need it in order for better connection. I think the more that you're able to use the skill and utilize it, the deeper your heart connections around the people you're with, it's more meaningful. I realize the truer and the more value aligned I am to my vulnerability, the better my relationships are. I do think that you brought up a really great point, Sean, about just the balance between oversharing and being yourself and being authentic to your vulnerabilities. Because I think that there is a fine line of what within art, what you want to share with folks, and where you can get relief from your grief and your joy, and then where it could actually bring you more tension or put you more in a negative space. So I think it's really important that before you share anything, you're kind of just checking in with yourself and your body. And that's kind of why rest comes into play as well, when you're really looking at just all of the feelings that you do want to share, and the stories that you want to share with folks,
Yeah. So
because it's deeply personal.
yeah, yeah. I know what you mean. Like kind of like knowing how you'll put it
Yeah.
or how you'll say it. Like maybe before you put it out there publicly, you'd share it with someone like closely, like
Yeah.
kind of refine it. It's not changing what you're saying, but like making it better, kind of.
Yeah, and I think it's Brene Brown who like started the whole like thing on vulnerability, or like made it a hotter topic. And her whole premise, her book Daring Greatly, started with like the Theodore Roosevelt quote about like the man in the arena.
She was the power of vulnerability. Was
Yeah,
that
yeah, yeah.
yeah.
And basically, you should really analyze who you're considering your critics and what you're examining, and really be honest to who's putting in the work and who's showing up. And those are the people that deserve the story, deserve the light of the truth.
Yeah, and like, is the criticism? Are the people that are the criticism's gonna come from like a genuine place to help you improve, or is it
Absolutely.
just like negative criticism?
Yeah,
Like, yeah,
totally.
yeah. So like with your writing, like what has been your journey with that? Like knowing what to put in it, put in.
Yeah, in terms of like when to share, or yeah, I think a poem doesn't feel ready for the world until it kind of makes me a little uncomfortable. I think like it's funny because now I can read a poem and I know if a writer is being too safe, or I could listen to a song and I'm like, that artist is playing it too safe. That, that metaphor isn't deep enough, or it's too surface level. I want to know about, that first heartbreak in first grade, and I want you to name that bully. I when the more granular you can get into a memory or interwoven into a story, um, the more credibility you have, I think, in your narrative journey, and your narrative truth. And I think that's so important to just like, in order, I think vulnerability lives a lot with shame in society. And I think there's a lot that shame holds us back from. So if vulnerability can work kind of as the key to unlock that shame, then I think it's really powerful to see who we can become.
Yeah, I guess it's kind of being more comfortable with yourself and who you are,
Yeah.
and then it won't bother you as much because like you're more honest with yourself. So if somebody says something harsh in return to it, then it's not.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, and I think like I always check in with myself on safety too. Like if there's something that I'm writing about, and there's two extremes. There's discomfort, and then there's just pure panic and torture and not good feelings. Discomfort means I'm excited by the possibility that, like this is going to make people think, this is going to spark conversation. I shouldn't have anxiety about, you know, who's going to read this, or, is this an honest story, or that shouldn't exist. If that exists, then that story isn't ready to be shared, and maybe it never will be. I have a lot of I with my book Wailing on Whisper Street, it came out, I found out I won the Jack McCarthy Prize in 2023. And at the time, I was actually going through a divorce privately, and like the world didn't know about it. And that was something I couldn't share, but I was writing new material and completely different poems. And, I even on tour, I have poems that are like love poems in my first book to my ex. And, I've had to come to and talk with my therapist. How do I perform these poems? They're not true to me anymore. And I have to kind of realize they're true to who I was then, and who I was then has every right in my narrative today, as who I am today. Like I need to
so you
give.
still feel like you need to report perform them, or do you ever?
Not so much, but I had very complicated feelings with them, and just like and not okay feeling. But then as I was talking to, just like my crew, my therapist, really, she said, there's a reason you wrote it, and there's likely someone in the crowd that might be you back then that needs to hear that poem. And that kind of made the full circle artist experience. And I had to think of how many bands, like the Stones singing love songs to a crowd and not being in love, but doing it anyway, because who knows if that's going to be someone's wedding song someday. And just kind of still keeping the art going, even when it's not necessarily your truth anymore, but knowing that you shared your art so true that that story can still resonate beyond you and it, which is like really cool and really powerful, but really difficult to like fully trust that you did it well. But I think if you're doing it well, you won't have any qualms.
Yeah, and well, it's been kind of like that with like this show. Like when I do like the solo episodes and I talk like about things, and I'm like just vulnerable and like
Yeah.
off the cuff. Like I never know like when something's gonna resonate with people. Like sometimes I think like, oh, like, well, I'm kind of putting this out there, like but then like somebody says, oh yeah, I really related to that. Like you never know.
Yeah,
Like it could be something somebody needs to hear. Or,
exactly. And I think energetically there's something that scares us right before we're like, we know when we're in the midst of sharing something that we're like, maybe no one wants this, but it's actually like it is the thing. Like that's it. Like there's that weird feeling, or that, because we just know, like I really do believe it.
yeah. But I guess it's like a balance, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes it could be like maybe like could there be like a TMI at times, or like a two or
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like it's so funny because I don't I think I went through a period living more vulnerably and honestly than my writing when I was writing, to unlock it in my writing and my poetry. Um, and I mean, I just started doing this in general, and I don't know if that helped my surroundings and my relationships. But I'm a very honest person. Like I have no filter. Like I also am very neurodivergent. So I think like
me
just
too.
lying is very
Yeah,
difficult and creates too much work for me. So I'd rather be honest. But in part of the honesty, I started being more honest about the uncomfortable things too. Because I grew up in a very demure household where it was just very like gender roles were known and subservient. And so part of being honest was just being honest, but also meek, growing up. And that's something I was like, well, I should really be honest about all the full experience. And that's something I started doing with more vulnerability. And I think everyone started being a little more honest with me too. Like, I don't know. I think it definitely, I
just like
realized though,
breaking your conditioning, kind of you had to or a bit or
yeah, but I realized, and this is something that happens to a lot of people, and I think Brene Brown mentions it. Then you just can kind of get to a level of overspilling where you could just be too, like you could just share too much. And I quickly realized that I was giving too much information or too much access to people that didn't necessarily need it. So that then that created
and you don't know right away if you can trust them and if they'll use it.
exactly. Yeah. And you shouldn't, there's like this whole idea like you shouldn't give all your marbles to like one friend immediately without knowing if they can contain, they can carry all your marbles. And I think that that's exactly how vulnerability is. And you have to, because vulnerability is also giving people the access to your story and your tender truths and things that aren't immediately given for a reason. And it's built up with empathy and interaction. So I think we do need to have kind of this image of not giving too much of ourselves without others also showing a little stock as well.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, I guess
just-
there's a way to share like who you are and like show self awareness and like your imperfections without it,
yeah,
without being like negative about yourself or showing weakness, because you don't want to show weakness to everybody. That's different.
no, no, not at all.
Yeah, because people can take advantage of. But like vulnerability, it's more like this is who I am, and like
Yeah,
I have these flaws, and like but it's like there's a strength with it. There's like a confidence with it at the same time.
yeah. And I think that the thing about vulnerability, rather than just like seeing it as almost like a weakness and a strength, and this like almost power aspect, right? It's also just I think vulnerability is approached with this side of like belonging, and I think in connection. And I think at the root of all humans, that's what we want. We want to belong. We want to be connected. We want to be in community, and we don't want to be isolated. So, and it's wild that the more, and I read somewhere like the opposite of belonging is fitting in.
Yeah.
And
Then
it's
you'd be alone if you're hiding yourself and you're around people that
exactly,
then you
yeah,
feel
yeah.
more lonely than by yourself. Like then it'd be a
Yeah,
group.
and you should be who you are, and like if you're actually trying to fit in, you're losing yourself. So it's more about keeping your individual,
Yeah,
and all of its power and
yeah.
and 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 defeat.
Being yeah, like being like considerate of others and stuff like that, and like like knowing like how you affect them and stuff, but like not trying to please them at the same time. Like being true to like your values and who you are. Like it's that kind of like balance.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
completely agree. And it's showing up even when it's harder to do, I think. Too.
That's so. So how'd you get with like how'd you get to like touring and all that with your writing and
Yeah, I started looking, I've been into writing all of my life. I'm just not I didn't personally pursue it seriously until pretty much the pandemic, and I started taking workshops with writers and just asking them more questions about their journeys. And I was taking a few workshops with some mentors that I really loved, and they were all on Right Bloody's press. And I knew that Right Bloody did an annual writing contest. So I entered and I happened to win. And when you win the deal, you get a book contract, and you have to do at least 20 US cities during your first year on tour. And so it's just been really cool to link up with other Right Bloody pressmates. And just, I was in LA, I was in a few spots in Michigan. I've been to Denver a few times now. And I'm based in Austin, but I'm originally from the New York area. So it's been
oh,
nice to go back
yeah.
to New York, New Jersey, and do shows out there with some folks. And
Yeah, I'm New Jersey, but like close to New York.
oh, okay,
South Orange,
cool.
yeah.
Where are you?
South Orange.
Oh, okay, cool. Yeah, I lived in Bloomfield. I like yeah, yeah, that was my old stomping Bloomfield, Montclair, my stomping grounds.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. I like that. Like Bloomfield, Montclair. The that Montclair, I used to like. I went to this place, the Meat Locker, a few times.
Okay, yeah, that's a
Even
show place.
yeah,
That was awesome.
yeah,
Yeah. That's such a cool place. Yeah, so much better than the Walmart.
yeah.
Yeah.
But do you like Austin better? Like, do you or how do you like?
I do love I moved to Austin mainly because of just the music scene here is a lot. It's more accessible. There's music all the time and under $30 even with
Oh, nice.
service fees,
Yeah,
which is just as a artist, I really that's where my budget goes. I don't spend it.
yeah.
I'm
Do you
not
do
someone
music yourself, or you're just like a more music?
I don't. I really, that's going to be my newest
Nice.
pandemic plan for self, or like a pandemic plan, but like kind of like what
Post
I did
Denver.
for poetry. I finally am going to learn how to play guitar truly, because I've been noodling around since I was
Oh,
a
cool.
child, not well. But I'm more of a lyricist, so I'm like, I want to try to get it all together. I
Yeah,
have a lot
I
of
started
time.
with guitar and then I switched to like bass.
Cool,
Yeah,
cool.
yeah. I feel like a lot of creative people like it's different outlets. Like usually like
Yeah, I actually really like painting. Like I like
oh nice.
drawing and painting. But I haven't had much to paint or a will to want to do it. I've been more into writing narratives or like
Yeah.
stories.
Oh, like I do that too. Like I have a cyberpunk thing I'm working on.
Yeah, yeah. So I've been I feel like I just need to get that outlet still out of me before I can get back to painting. But it's just so important to like show up in all the ways you can. And I think like one of the bigger things for me, and I don't know if you feel this way just in your writing or just with your podcast. Mary Oliver like mentions like living as poet, and just how difficult that is. And so for me, like after being on tour this year and writing and being around people and talking about writing and talking about grief and talking about things, I kind of want to like veg out in a different art medium where like I don't necessarily feel as poet, because I know that that's how I feel regardless, and that's how I feel every waking day of life. So I kind of want less content, but I don't know. I say that and I feel like I'm going to be, pigeoned in a little closet writing my next novella. But I'm excited to try a different creative outlet.
Yeah. Oh, so have you like published creative fiction, or is it more like stuff you've been working on?
I've been working on it. I actually,
It takes a
my
while to
big,
like put it together like a story. And
my big goal, I have this like fake out, video setting right now background, but on my wall behind me, actually in my office, I have um my storyline for my sci-fi book. Like I've
cool.
been working on a sci-fi series
Nice.
for like the last 6 years.
Oh, really cool.
Um but like nothing too crazy. I say nothing too crazy, but like I haven't put enough thought into it. I just play around with some characters or ideas occasionally. And I'm waiting for the moment to. I think I need a break from my day job and like poetry. Like I need a vacation.
What is your day like? Is your day job something you enjoy?
Yeah, I work for a New York based company, and I work in global tax,
Oh, okay.
and employer taxation. So it's very critical, like mathy.
Okay.
Yeah. My therapist enjoys saying that I have both like my left and my right side of my brain like constantly
Right.
activated. But I'm just like, oh, that means we have no break. That's fun. But it's balanced. It's balanced.
See, that's good you could do that because I was always like more like the creative side, like the writing, like the verbal and stuff like that. But then with like math and stuff, like it took me forever to like get math right and stuff like that. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. It was challenging at first, and I still definitely have imposter syndrome when I'm doing certain um mathematical kind of endeavors, but I've been in that career now for about 11 years. And I've put in the time that I'm like, okay, I can do this.
Yeah. Do you feel like being like you mentioned neuro? I am too. Like ADHD, I was diagnosed with, and like being like
Yeah.
on the autism spectrum, like mildly on the autism spectrum, also like OCD.
Yeah,
Maybe.
I have OCPD.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of my creativity though comes with that, like the kind of like obsessive thinking and like
A
yeah,
1000%. Yeah. I think that I'm able to look at something in all different angles, whether I like to or not, because my brain doesn't let me not.
Yeah.
try to kind of puzzle piece something into the grander picture, the grander, making sense of how do I move from this. I realized that with a lot of just some of the poems that I wrote in my book are very technical. One of my favorite poems, or I didn't realize it was going to be a favorite poem of mine, but it's become a favorite poem of mine because of the crowd reception from friends and family members that are also kind of neurodivergent or in technical jobs. I have a poem that looks like a planner. And it's a poem that I wrote when I was moving from New Jersey, from Bloomfield actually to Austin. I found a bunch of old planners, and whether I like to admit it or not, I process things by scheduling. And I have planners that are pretty blocked, and all my life it will say like driver's license
Just the way to like
appointment.
organize everything is.
Yeah, driver's license appointment, cry in a corner, go to work, like eat lunch, like very like, and it was that, and I found this planner of like the 10 days that it took for me to grieve my dad dying.
Oh,
And he was in
sorry,
hospice
sorry about
care.
that.
Yeah, no, and it was just kind of wild to see that was it was literally just written in my planner, like, "Hmm." And I was just like, oh, poor little 20-year-old, 21-year-old me. This is how you grieved, the person who's half of your life, like, or at least, half of your DNA. And it's just like kind of wild to like, when I wrote that, I had no idea that it was going to spark the chords that it did, and musician friends and just like lawyer friends, just different people that are kind of enslaved to their schedules as well. Um, and I think that's kind of the beauty of poetry and the beauty of having these cool little vessels where I can put these little secrets to life for the grief or the vulnerabilities in, is like, okay, well, here's my puzzle, unlock it, and hopefully that puzzle will give you some joy on a really stormy day.
Yeah. So like people, things people can relate to like from their own experience. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah. And I was gonna ask you like what's been the reaction to like being like more vulnerable with your work and everything, but I guess you said a lot of that. But,
Yeah, I think one of the things that like I'm still not ready for, or that has been a bit unusual, is because I've lived my life as a non-creative, or it's like someone is masking my creative like abilities most of my career. So I'm starting to have my colleagues from, I taught high school English. I've now been in the finance world for 11 years. So I'm starting to have other colleagues that necessarily didn't know about the writer in me or the writer circle, um, hear these stories and, come to shows. I had a performance for my tax, like for my day job. They had me read poems last week at a corporate event, which was just wild, bridging the two. Um,
so it
so
kind of tied the two worlds together. Like,
yeah, and it's like, what poem do I read so that I don't share too much?
yeah,
Like, like still
yeah,
keep it kind of a safe, or they can read at their own, and it's every time it scares me, and every time it is the best thing that happens to me. All to say that I think like we just have to live in the fear a little more. Um, because I don't know, I'm always so scared that someone's going to use all of these things against me, or just our lives were always put up with the worst case scenario. I think we think about, and we just
we
believe that
don't
it's going
consider
to
the
turn
best.
out.
Like, what could be the best?
Yeah, and it's going to be a non or neutral scenario, or it's going to be really great and really soul enriching. And I think so long as you're like doing what's in your heart and what's best for your heart, there's no way that it can't just end up soul enriching. Like, it really is. Like, I know that sounds really cheesy and cliche, but it's like, it is true. Like,
Yeah. Well,
if
that's where
you're,
the growth happens too, like through the discomfort and
yeah,
yeah,
absolutely. And like, and that's still like, it scares the living crap out of me. Like, I get so scared when, like my chief medical officer, like I work with like beyond smart scientists, finance people, and not that like everyone has intelligent people they're working with, but like these people are brilliant, and they were just like, oh my God, I love what you did there. I love the wrong, and I'm just like, like it was just like such a cool feeling, just to have that, and maybe have, enlighten an otherwise mathematical or technical world with a little bit more art. And I think that's the cool thing about it, is that art will always be something that is done everywhere and kind of done for entertainment. And I feel like there is a taboo layer to it that's kind of fun, like a risky layer to art where you could be yourself and you can have this creative license. And it allows me to have a different layer, which has been cool.
yeah, and it's something that everybody appreciates, like whether they're in the arts or not. Like it's part of their life to some degree.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I think it's just things like, even although as uncomfortable as they are, like speaking in front of my daytime colleagues, it was still just knowing that they wanted to hear it, or there's a space for it. And the fact that there's spaces for art, especially in this world and this time, is just so important to constantly keep these places where we can have these conversations and like allow people to have more stories shared. And that was like what was really cool about it, because then I was like, okay, who else wants to write books? Talk to me. Like, let's get everyone to write a book.
Yeah. Well, and sometimes art should be like have a little bit of discomfort, like or challenge people, like in how they think and like challenge that's like when people like complain like, oh, this I don't like that they put politics into this movie. It's like, but art's always been like political or like critical of the time. Like to me,
Absolutely.
that's kind of like the point of art in a lot of ways. So
Yeah. And it's like, art is meant to disrupt and be courageous. Like, it's not something that's just sitting there on a boring, backdrop. It's not watching just the paint dry. It's literally, it's shaking the wall down. It's breaking it. It's demolishing it. It's living with purpose. And that involves courage.
yeah, I even thought I just thought of Star Trek. I know that's, but like how that challenged like its time, like it was progressive for its time. Like
Yeah.
yeah, that was
And it's all about that. It's all about just challenging. Like, you have to challenge. Keep it.
yeah. And I just thought of like when you talked about like the sharing or not sharing, like I think I learned like as I like, got older, like not every like job or everything will be understanding if like you say you have ADHD or something like that. So I kind of had to learn like, okay, not everybody's going to be understanding that. I got to figure out how to kind of like mask and you know get things like find my own
It's
way of like figuring out things because like people aren't always that understanding or they don't care or, you know.
absolutely, yeah. And that's just such an important thing in finding community, right? Finding community in these spaces, sharing your stories, like when you can, and just making it as honest as you can, but also protecting yourself. I think is like really important. Um, but I think like I'm very fortunate. My company, we work with a lot of mental health, like that's our platform is on family building and healthcare and mental health care access. And so that's something that's never been a question, but I've been in other situations where it's been harder. And I think like you have to keep working to safety. Just work to safety. That's what I've learned. Work to safety however you can, whether that's, with the communities. I say most of my friends are not real. They're not real life friends. Or I've never met them in real life. They're digital friends. But I think,
But you do you meet them when like you tour, like, and then you see
yes, I do. I have met. My friends have legs. But I've just made really great friends through just online workshops that, we do have check-ins daily. Like, hey, how are you doing? Okay, just hydrate your flower, go in the sun, touch some grass. And it's just like having that wellness. And I think we one of the things that happens with art is we attribute attention with affection as well when we're sharing our vulnerabilities and our like deeper stories and our deeper truths. And because it's rich and raw content, people are showing us likes or showing us, the time for the moment, but it's not actual grounded in any true affection or sheer care for the story and the preservation of it. So that's something that I think having your actual community and your own self is
so what do
so
you mean like
important.
so what do you mean like they give attention to it but they don't, it's not like genuine attention or
Well, yeah, and I think that that's just with art, you have to understand the fleeting ephemeralness of, the first book, the second book, the first album, the second album. You're going to have that initial fan base or that initial reaction, but in order to keep that consistent driver, you need to make sure that you have your art or you have whatever's your true calling there so that it doesn't fade when the attention isn't there necessarily, so that you have like your core solid, so that you're not I feel like I've seen
are you
people
talking about like are you talking about like a happiness like or like a contentness with regardless of
Well,
done
I've seen
yeah.
people link and Brown mentions it within oversharing. They think that tying, giving more of their horrors or their truths or their griefs would actually then get more attention or get more folks involved. And it's like, that's not actually the way to like, you have to really preserve yourself and your story and keep it safe kind of, and tell it on your own time. Like the story should be told on the right time kind of
Like be
thing.
careful how it's put yourself out there but be like careful how and
Yeah, be careful and mindful and of your timing and just do it for the right reasons and the right resources. Yeah.
yeah because you don't want to invite like negativity to you
Yeah,
yeah
absolutely. And you want it to just be aligned with what feels good.
yeah. And is there anything like that in Austin? Because usually you said like mainly like digital. Is there like anything like writing community in Austin though or anything?
Yeah, I'm still newer to this area and it's more musically sound. So there's more like even the open mic nights are songwriters. So that's why kind of I've been thinking of bridging into like guitar and music writing that way, just so that I can have a community here with that group. Because they want folks that are coming on with instruments as well.
Nice. So
Yeah, and the spoken word community, like the slam
mhm.
scene is really big here. Unfortunately, I'm more of a prosy poet. So I don't have as many or any slam pieces.
Like,
But
is that
I
spoken words more of like a is an act with it? Like would you maybe
yeah, yeah.
in that way? Like yeah. Yeah, because I've read prose, but like I've read it like in open mics and stuff. But I don't know. Like I guess would you say that's different than spoken word or like?
No, I would say spoken word is kind of similar or more aligned with some page poetry. Like if you're reading from a page, slam poetry is a lot faster. And it necessarily sometimes doesn't follow the page as well. So like it's more like an like improv
And like
almost.
performative? Is it, there's like a
Yes, yes,
performative?
yes.
Okay. Okay.
Yes, it's a lot louder too. Yes.
Yeah. So you don't see yourself getting loud, or could you get?
I don't, no, I don't know. I can control, like, I can control a room and my story, just keeping different tones and intonations without staying on one vibe. Yeah. And I feel like just that vibration is just too high of a
Oh
vibration
yeah,
for
no.
me.
Yeah, like too intense, like too. Yeah,
Yes, yes,
yeah,
absolutely.
yeah. Like a
I
TED talk, I guess, or something.
Yeah, I work so hard to mellow out my very active small dog and small
Yeah.
child.
What
So
kind
I'm trying.
what kind of dog is it?
He's a tiny Portuguese Podenco mixed
Oh,
Chihuahua. He's 10 pounds and
uh,
just like hyper. He's not hyperactive by any means, but he's just emotionally, like, I can feel like literally his like little heart like
oh.
beating very fast all the
Yeah,
time.
yeah. My sister's dog's kind of like they have a Chiweenie. It's like a
Yeah,
Mexican
yeah, okay,
dachshund and a
yeah,
wiener. Yeah, same
yeah.
way.
So I'm just like, I just try to keep him calm, and so I don't want to be on higher energy without
Yeah.
letting him know. Everything's okay.
So, what advice would you give to someone who's like afraid to put themselves out there, but they want to, but like they're hesitant?
Yeah. Um, I would say practice. I would say practice what it is you want to share. Like, figure out what story wants to be told in you and share it with someone. Like, figure out, your safe space first and try your art medium and then go about it very slowly. I think what happens is we think, especially with writers or poets, we think we can write something and it will be very, very good in our heads, and we don't share it, and then it doesn't land. Like, the person doesn't know what the topic is about or the thesis, so that person might get a little upset without even realizing it, or they might just not agree with the content. And so then that's their feedback to the content. And then because the content is personal, we're taking that kind of negatively in our own interpretation. So even if it's a person we trust, it can be kind of thrown into a different kind of disarray of a safe space or a safe reaction. I think that happens a lot when we're trying new material, right? Like, I have some terrible things that happen to me. Everyone has. But point in case example, my brother's death, right? That's something I knew when I was writing. I had to talk about my brother being murdered. That's something I don't
Or what?
people don't want to hear immediately when I'm talking to them. I'm like, how do I say this in a poem? How am I comfortable saying this in a poem so that if someone doesn't like this poem, I can still talk about a very touchy subject about my brother being murdered by these two, So you have to practice giving these uncomfortable, or I think it's practicing and also seeing why you want to share something. Um, because if you know why you want to share it and you practice it, there's nothing you can get but the joy of sharing it and having real-time relationships with people. The thing that can hurt you is if you're sharing before you're ready, so you
Oh, yeah.
don't know really why you're sharing. I didn't know when I started sharing as a little girl or as a younger poet that my brother died, or he was murdered by his roommates. I didn't know that I was sharing that because I wanted to warn people that they should really be careful about who they trust. Really, that's why. That was deep inside. That was the goal, the end goal.
Sorry
That's
to
why
hear that. That's terrible. Sorry.
yeah, right. But that's like, that was what was eating at my little girl heart. But that's not what I was a little girl that was hurt. And I'm like, I want people to know that my brother died. Right. But it was really, I just wanted people to feel like, okay, you're not alone, but you should trust, like, you should be really wary of who you trust. Um, and so, and I was sharing that way too early. Like I was sharing that when that after that happened to me, you know, when I was 14, and I wasn't going on dates until I was 28, because no one wants to date the girl that knows everything about death. I'm a little too early. But it's, you know, you have to, it's all comes down to kind of preserving yourself, and just, it's your story first. It's your truth first. So why are we sharing? Are we sharing? And it's usually we're sharing, or the vulnerability is there. It goes back to the belonging, right? We want to belong. How do we want to belong? How is this story going to better someone or better us, right? It should always be to better. It shouldn't be to hurt. So, and I think that a lot of younger artists, myself included, I've written some things that were intended to hurt and not to better, truly.
What do you mean? Just like someone you were angry at, or
Yeah, angry
yeah,
siblings. Oh my God, I can't tell you how many angry poems I've wrote about my brother or my sister, where that are still alive, that I'm just like, you know, you are terrible, or, you know, just angst ridden poems that, you know, should have never seen the light of day. They thankfully didn't, or they didn't get very far. But it's still just knowing that, and knowing that now, I'm like, oh my God, what if I did? And there's so many people that do. I mean, look at all the diss tracks out there. Some of them are funny, but like rappers are putting out terrible things out there about other like people on in the scene. And it's just like, there's a lot of malice out there, and that's not how you live with integrity. That's not how you live value aligned with vulnerability in a way that's going to help preserve. Like,
it's
yeah,
just
you
like
might,
putting negativity out there. It's
yeah, and negativity will get you the attention. Negativity will get you the sell, but it's not going to get you the legacy. It's not going to get, like, you're not going to get whatever it is that you were hoping for, truly, I think.
yeah. I feel like you should put out there like what you want to get back, like not
Yeah,
like get more animosity back towards you.
absolutely.
Yeah, I mean some people do, because I know like there's provocateur types that just like to, but yeah.
But it's
So
it's
let's see.
not, it's, you know, it's dust in the wind. It's not going to last. It's fine.
Yeah. Well, yeah, this has been a good chat. I think we covered
Yeah.
some good topics. Oh yeah, I know what my final thing was going to be. I guess to me it's like self awareness is the thing to work on. Like be vulnerable with yourself first and really understand yourself and your flaws and your. Then I think you can be vulnerable when you're completely honest with yourself. If you're not honest
Yeah.
with yourself first, then it's harder to be vulnerable and put yourself out there.
I and I think it's because we live in such a media consume, you know, a consumer culture. So once the art is out, it's just consumed so quickly that having that awareness is just so important, because if you don't have it, it will be released before you can take it back. And I'm always mindful of that, mainly because I do have a small child, and I'm just like, I don't, everything I do, I want to think about 3 steps ahead, because it's hers too. Um, yeah.
You mean like her hearing what you say or something?
It's hers, it's her story, it's hers, however she would want to interpret. I think she has a part of my story too that I have to be very careful of, and protecting of, for sure.
Yeah, that makes sense. So thank you for coming on.
Of
It's been a great
course. Yeah.
conversation. And anything you want to like plug, or like where people could follow you or anything like that? Or?
Yeah, just, I mean, on the Instagram, if that's still a thing, that people are into, it's just at Bree Bailey Poetry. And my website, always same name, Bree Bailey Poetry, has like all my tour information, and information if folks want to like link out and talk workshops or just anything. I love communicating with people, and just, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, it's good to yeah, good conversations. Yeah,
Yes, absolutely. And there's so many artists and wonderful projects in the world that I think we just all need to collaborate more, for
yeah,
sure.
definitely. And that's about it for this episode of Let's Talk About the Deep Stuff. Spotify or iTunes, Let's Talk About the Deep Stuff. Also on social media, Let's Talk About the Deep Stuff you can find. And Sean Kneese, SeankNeese, Kneese with the silent K. It's not like Niece, it's Kneese. And that's about it for this one. We'll catch you on the next one.
So